everybody. Welcome. Thank you for being here with us. My name is Eric. I am a SuiteScript coach, and I am joined today in my hosting duties by one of Salto's customer engineers, Jeff Rutledge. Jeff, how are you doing?
Hi, folks. Doing well, thanks, Eric. How are you?
Great. Doing well. Once we get started in NetSuite, most of us tend to stay on it for quite a long time. And in that time, we typically add a ton of customizations. But once those customizations have been around for a while, we seem to rarely step back and reassess them or remove them when they're not needed anymore. So over time, our NetSuite accounts get bloated, sluggish with all of these customizations. So today, Jeff mostly and myself are going to be demonstrating how you can use the Salto platform to help you identify and clean up those stale customizations within your NetSuite account. Before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. We've scheduled an hour for this, but we are reserving plenty of time to answer your questions. So the Q&A is open, and I'll be keeping an eye on that throughout the show. So if you have a question for Jeff or myself, go ahead and drop that in the Q&A tab. And lastly, this session is being recorded, and that will be distributed out via email to everybody who attended and registered. So look for that shortly after we end. I think with that, Jeff, I'm going to turn things over to you.
Sounds great. Thank you, Eric. So my name is Jeff Rutledge. I'm on the customer engineering team, as Eric mentioned. So I work with customers right from the start of our engagement when we are showing them how Salto works, and then helping them onboard and ongoing through the ongoing success of our customers with our product. I'll be showing you kind of the overall basics of Salto first. I'm going to go into some more advanced features just around the search and being able to kind of really look carefully at a NetSuite environment to understand it and to also plan for change and to discover changes that need to occur. I'd like to keep it interactive as we can as in such a situation, but so please do put stuff into the Q&A. And Eric, if there's something relevant in the Q&A, don't hesitate to stop me, and we can address things as they come up.
Don't worry, I will.
Yeah. All right, excellent. Sounds really good. Very cool. All right. So I'm going to start with a kind of overview of what Salto is all about. So Salto is a application that helps manage business application configuration. So primarily, we're looking at your NetSuite configuration. We also support other applications, I should say, not just NetSuite, but also Salesforce and Okta and Jira and others. What we do is we connect to those applications, and we do something called the fetch. So I'm connected to several applications you can see here on the side. Again, not just NetSuite, but let me just look just at my NetSuite accounts. So I've got a couple of NetSuite accounts I'm connected to now. By connected, what that means is that I am authenticated against the NetSuite APIs. We authenticate against a couple of different ways. We primarily use SDF as our interface to NetSuite. However, we found that SDF wasn't quite complete in all the things that we wanted to help manage, and so we built a small, relatively innocuous Suite app. Doesn't run except during our fetch process. And that Suite app allows us access to some of the other APIs that NetSuite provides outside of SDF. And that allowed us to get things like, whereas in SDF, you're only allowed a certain subset of the file cabinet, we actually are able to fetch and allow you to manage the entire file cabinet, or as much of it as you want. You can be selective about that. Also things like subsidiaries and currencies and those sorts of things. So we connect to those APIs as a first step. And then subsequent to that, after we connect to it, we ask those APIs lots of questions. So we ask NetSuite how it's configured, and we take all of the answers to those questions, and we transform them into this map of the configuration. So that's what we're seeing here. This is sort of the results of the map. And so we store lots of information about things like settings. I'll get to type later, but settings. So things like, the accounting preferences and the company features that are configured, we can look at those. We can also look at any number of configuration records from accounts, although they're not downloaded by default, but I've turned that on because I want to see all my accounts. Accounts to currencies to lists to saved searches, roles, transaction body fields, all kinds of fields, workflows. So all the things that you tend to manage in a NetSuite administration capacity, they are captured in their current state every time we do a fetch. And we typically do a fetch on a daily basis. I can run one manually if I'd like to. But normally we fetch daily, and that gives you a relatively up-to-date picture of exactly how things are configured. So not only records, we call those records, those are the configuration elements. They're basically, it's kind of as if you click download XML on every single element within NetSuite. And
Which
then
you
as
don't
I
want to do.
mentioned, we get the Suite scripts and templates directory. I've also chosen to include the Suite bundles directory for my environment, so that gives me a little bit of extra ability to manage things that are in the Suite bundles directory. Um, and then also we have all the custom records that are defined, and that includes the custom records along with the custom record elements themselves. So for any custom records you've defined, if there are instances of that, we will actually collect those as well at your discretion. Of course, there are some custom records that have far too many elements to include as part of a configuration management process. But that's at your discretion. So we can collect them where they're handy for doing this kind of work. And then if they're very, very large custom record lists, then we can exclude those too. So those are the sorts of things that we download. Now, if I want to go and look at any one of these elements, I can see we already looked at company features here and accounting preferences, but let's look at a workflow as well. So you can see these are all of the workflows I have defined in my environment. So every single one of those workflows, if I went to NetSuite, this is what I would see in the list of workflows. And so I can manage them all. And the cool thing here is that in sort of this offline view, I can click on one workflow and look at its configuration, which is kind of nice, right? Uh, uh, I wouldn't necessarily want to manage a lot of the workflows functionality within Salto. We can, but usually that's best done in the application like NetSuite. Um, but I can bounce around from a configuration perspective, and I can look at, this approval workflow, and then I can look at some other workflows. I can look at my friend Dan's workflows. I can look at my friend Kirk's workflows. So we can bounce around among the workflows a lot more quickly than you can in NetSuite. And that's true of, work from workflows, but I'll show you exactly, in fact, the next step here, I'll show you how to bounce to other kinds of elements too, because workflows, in addition to having their configuration, like all the initial configuration, their states, the states and the transitions. So we capture all of the different. Let me look at a more complex one here. Hang on, this one here is good. Um, we capture all of the states that a workflow encompasses, so you can sort of peruse the workflow and even look for things in the workflow. Like I think I have a number here where I compare. This is a 2-level workflow, and this is the threshold. So I can really begin to look at exactly what my configure is, what my workflow is configured as. But in addition, I also get to see, and this is probably more important from a kind of a meta administration perspective. Normally, you're going to be doing a lot of this kind of work inside of NetSuite, but what NetSuite doesn't do a great job of is showing you what a workflow depends on, a workflow or any other kind of element, a script, a workflow, anything you like. And so we capture these dependencies as part of that map, as part of that transformation. We capture those dependencies as well. Eric, I see you come off mute. What's up?
Did. So one, Roy asked in the Q&A here, does it capture workflow action scripts to see the relationship? And yes, it does. That a
Great
workflow
question.
action script would show up right here
Right
in
there.
this dependencies list.
Yep.
And I think what's important here, if we're looking at this through a lens of I'm trying to clean up my account, maybe I have identified this workflow as being stale. I don't want it anymore. We don't need it anymore. Something replaced it, whatever it is. What will be the impact if I turn this off or replace it? I can come in here. I can, one, see the functionality of it, but two, I can see all the things it touches. I can see the fields it touches. I can see the fields that require it or the scripts that require it, things like that. I
Mhm.
can see all of those connections and do that sort of impact analysis of what if I turn this off? What if I get rid of this workflow? What
Mhm.
happens? What are all the things I need to consider and investigate?
Yeah.
And these dependencies, you can click through them for multiple to see multiple layers of the dependency graph. So you're not
Yeah.
limited to just that first tier.
Exactly right. Yeah, that's where I want to go next is showing you that indeed we are showing the workflow action script. Where is that down here? So we have a relationship from this workflow to the workflow action script. So this is in the form of a dependency. Anytime there's this one of these purple underline things, or like a link. I remember the old days in the Mosaic web browser. For those who have gray enough beards, remember that. The purple links are things you can click on. So when I click on that link, it takes me to the definition of that element. And so now I'm looking at a workflow action script type called, AMP workflow action disable fields. And so I can see how the workflow action record is configured. So this is the script record here. And I can see that also it depends on the actual JS file too. So I can look at the JS file in addition to that. And I can drill my way from the workflow to the workflow action script definition down into the file itself with a little bit of metadata even at this level. So this is the file cabinet metadata here, and then I can see the content of the file as well. Um, and I can also see it's dependent on a parent folder. I can also see that this thing it's used by that workflow action script record. So the script record, I can come from the bottom of the dependency chain, and now I can go back up. Again, now I'm really getting into the ability to do this impact analysis that says if I delete something, what are the things beneath that in the dependency chain that are going to get that I have to take advantage of? I'll show you another example of that in a moment. I can also see where else this particular workflow action script might be used. In this case, it's just the one record, but I'm going to show you in a moment how it looks when there are two, because that is often the case where you need to really understand what if you're going to go and delete a file, a record sorry, a field. If we're going to go and delete a field, what impacts might that have? So that's what I'll get into next here. So let's go back to that workflow. This workflow depends on a number of transaction body fields. And so if I want to delete this workflow, maybe I want to delete some of the stuff around the workflow as well. So if I look at this, I think it's the second level approver. So here is one of the transaction body fields that is used in this workflow. So I can look at this and say, maybe I want to delete this as well because it becomes technical debt. So I'm trying to manage technical debt as I go now rather than sort of cleaning up later, although we can also support that. But if you want to manage as you go, if I'm deleting the workflow, I might want to delete these fields. But if I look at the bottom of this field, you can see it's used in a bunch of places. Now, don't worry, because oftentimes it's used in a transaction form, for example. And when you delete a field, it just gets removed from the transaction form, so no big deal. But it could also be used by a second workflow. I think I picked the wrong one here. I'll approach this from a different angle to find the actual file that the field that's being used twice. Um, so in this case, great. If I delete the workflow and I delete this field, I'm really not going to suffer much. It's used by oh, actually no, it is. I might suffer here. Actually, it's used by a file. It's used by a script file. So in fact, if I deleted this script would stop functioning. And I know, in fact, this is not my script because SRD is my colleague Scott, who you may have seen on a previous webcast. Scott is against my wishes, in fact, using my variables here. And the reason I'm concerned about that is because I like to add and delete these things at will. But now I know that Scott's using this, and so I can come in here and look at what the impacts of his code might be, and it's a pretty basic little thing. These are just demo environments. But now I can really get at the heart of what might be impacted if I choose to make a deletion on a particular element.
Like that ability to look through the actual code of a script file and see what fields it touches, what searches it might run. That's
Yeah.
not something that you can do any other way. There's no way in the NetSuite UI to do that. So having that ability as a developer, when you're going into, yeah, I'm going to delete this script or I'm going to delete this field, whatever it is, you can see almost at a glance all your scripts that touch it, so you can start planning that sort of refactor of
Yeah.
working around that now missing field or soon
That's
to be missing field.
And I can come at this from the other angle, like I said before. Let me close all my tabs here. We'll start over, and we're going to start, and we're going to look at that script that Scott made. It's this one here. So this is the script now I'm just saying, oh, okay, let me just see, what does this script depend on? Just out of the blue. I know that I want to go and look at a particular script and what it needs. So in addition to being able to view the code here, with this, if this is a long script, it might be hard to really identify all of the dependencies. Well, Salto does that work for you. And so we actually make a list of generated dependencies down here that says, all right, all the variables that are used within a particular script, we're going to list them here for you and show you what those dependencies are. So I don't know if I can find another example of a script that uses more stuff. Let's see here. How about, bear with me while I find one in my area. Yeah, here's some. And I think the workflow action script might have a couple more dependencies. No, it doesn't really. Okay. So but if there were lots of dependencies in Scott's script here, we would see those generated dependencies based on whatever we find in the code. This is sort of buried in the code. We'll surface those for you automatically and show you the dependencies and allow you to go and look at the now I can look at this script, its dependencies, and go and say, okay, well, if I don't need my script anymore and I want to delete all the things I depend on, what else is going to be impacted? So I'm going back the other way now and saying, hey, wait, what about that workflow? So here's the workflow that's also that's also utilizing this particular transaction body field. Cool. All right, I'm just gonna watch your mute button, Eric. And so if I see you come off mute, I'll pause and ask you for questions. And if I don't see your mute button, I'll just keep rolling.
Sure thing.
Okay, so this is the basic explore functionality. I'm gonna kind of shift gears into a little bit of a different view. The way when I said we connect to NetSuite and we download this map, that map is just really a bunch of text files, in fact, and they're sort of related. In many cases, highly related to the XML files, but they're formatted differently. I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. Um, the reason it's really important, it gives us some real benefits. When we download the entire configuration, including all of your Suite scripts and such, it gives us the ability to do some useful things like use version control. So now I can actually take your NACL files and put them into version control. I can compare different environments, screens, and I can do this full text search too. So if I wanted to search for example, I think let's search for underscore VAT, I think is what I want. So the value added tax, I can see that there's an element that has that VAT related to it, and I can also see that there are a couple of files. These are the actual NACL files that have VAT as part of them, part of their setup. These are basically script IDs that have VAT in them. But I can also see that the text underscore VAT is used across my environment in many different places. So this is where we're beginning to look at the actual underlying NACL files. NACL files are the Salto configuration language, so NaCl. NaCl also, some might notice, is the chemical symbol for salt, sodium chloride. So we think that's pretty funny. Oh, and by the way, if I get rid of all of my tabs here, you'll see this fellow here. His name is Knuckles. And Knuckles, if you have ever gone to a trade show where Salto is present, you may have found yourself some Knuckles socks or some Knuckles Lego or a Knuckles stuffy, which is pretty fun. So Knuckles is our mascot. He keeps things light, and he does a lot of the work for us, as you might see in some of the other operations when we do deployments. So NACL files, I can see that this VAT occurs across several files. So there's several instances of this particular pattern in my environment. So there's a PDF template where it exists. In this case, it is in the name of that PDF template. There is lots of transaction forms where it occurs. So it's probably, if I find a particular instance of them, like these are references. These NACL files have, this is part of the mapping elements. They have references. In this case, it's a reference to a advanced PDF template. And so I can see that this VAT is used here. And I can also do cool things like if I see these references in my NACL files, I can right click them and I can say inspect the element, and that brings me back to that other view, remember? and it shows me the element, the referenced element. So I can see lots and lots of things. This is the actual PDF, advanced template. In fact, including the metadata about the template and the template data itself. And so if we find things inside of a template that's useful to find, we'll find that too. Also, let's see here, where else there's some file cabinet entries that use this, right? So here's a script that actually references this as well. So not only can I find the variables used within a script using the kind of traversing the script itself, but I can also find all occurrences of some random pattern as they appear either as variables in a script or in some other capacity as well. So we're really beginning to see now, if I'm trying to clean things up, I can look for all the places where something occurs and find out if I need to make changes or if we need to update the code in some way or other. Eric, you're off mute. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, and to again tie this back to like that lens of cleaning up, of identifying technical debt, a really common thing for especially like contractors, but firms and a lot of teams to do is put some sort of pattern in their IDs or their names or something like that.
Yep.
So they put, their initials in the name of their searches, or they put the company initials in the IDs of their scripts or something like that. And
Mhm.
so if you are, say, rolling off a third party contractor or something like that, and you want to know what are all the things they built, like show me all the things they built. I know they put these three letters in all their IDs. This search will just very quickly show you that. You can see all the things they made that follow that pattern, and it searches, you know, like we said, not only the name of the object, but the ID and all the contents of files, things like that. So you can search your whole NetSuite configuration basically for that specific pattern and be a really reliable chunk of what that maybe contractor built for you.
Yep, you
Same
bet.
if you have an employee leave or something like that, and they put their initials in all their saved searches or something like that. You can very quickly identify those and shift them to new owners or inactivate them, however you want to take action on those objects.
You
I
got it.
do have a couple questions here again from Roy. Thank you, Roy.
Okay,
Um,
cool.
Roy is curious how Salto handles a library script in the dependency management. So when you have a script file that
Hmm.
references another script file,
Hmm.
and that dependency, might have fields, searches, etc., other dependencies on it. How do we see that chain?
That's a great question. I don't have anything prepared to show that. There might be some cases where we can go and explore. Um, uh, Eric, do you know of any sort of somewhat default or standardized scripts that may have some dependencies, or what might it be? What kind of dependent library might I be dependent on?
No, but I do know that where we will see it is if you know that you have, if you have your script file and that
Mhm.
loads, file B, if you go look at the definition of file B, you'll see all of its dependencies in there, and the script file will have a dependency on file B. I'm
Perfect.
trying to remember the
Yeah,
letters
that's
I've
a
used.
great
So
question.
you'll be
So,
able to click through that chain of dependencies to see. So you won't see like on the script, you won't see the fields that the dependency module uses, but you will be able to click through to the file, the dependent file, and see those there.
I'm trying to think of a script I might have that uses um, libraries. I don't know if I do. Does this one? Well, this one uses the standard libraries, I guess, right? Uh, yeah, I'm not much of a SweetScript programmer. I must confess, I'm not a SweetScript guy. I do know a little bit about JavaScript, but SweetScript I use the templates for the most part, or
And
I've built
then,
them. So,
yeah,
uh,
so it's a great question. I apologize, I didn't have a scenario set up for that.
yeah.
Um, but another question from Roy here that I think is relevant here. Do the Knuckle files contain a way to see how a field is named on a form? So, for example, the ID of a field is named one thing, but on a custom form, it is
Hmm.
called something else.
Right.
Um,
on the
So it
custom
might be
form, it just
called,
take on the name of the like the name as defined in NetSuite.
I think it's talking about like form labels. So you might have a custom field
Okay.
that is on multiple forms. And on one form, his example here is on one form, this field is called UOM, but on another form, it's called units of measure.
Oh, I
So there's
see.
different labels. Um,
One thing you
I'll let you
might,
tackle that one first.
yeah, you might be able to accomplish that by looking at, let me see if I can find a form and let's just grab a form here. Let's see here. Uh, let's look at the NACL version of the form. So here's the form in elements view. I can just as easily go and look at it in the NACL form, NACL view. Now I'm going to see, I'm going to see a field reference probably. Yeah. So here's a field. I just searched for field dot because I know that our references look like, NetSuite dot transaction body field dot instance dot whatever. And this is the name of the field itself. So you might be able to find references to this field. Now we can see the label here, right? So what I can look for is this string. Okay, and I can look at it across my content. So here's where that string appears, and it's always in a form. So this thing is only ever referenced from forms. And now I can look at each one of those forms and see what the label is. So in this case, it's got opportunity owner. I bet you it's going to be opportunity owner in all of them, but I certainly could find out what the label is in each of those forms. And so I can go and find forms where it's wrong or where it's not standard, and I can repair those, for example.
Can you go the other way and search by the label and get sort of back to the same?
You bet.
That can get you to the field, which then gets you to the other forms
Yeah,
that that field is
absolutely.
on.
So in this case, it's the same. We're getting the same list because they are the same. If I had one of these transaction forms that was like OO for instead of opportunity owner, I could search for label equals OO and it would find me that one. So yes, we can use this advanced search functionality to look for the things that are almost sort of in NACL format, right? And show me those things. I can also do some other cool things like earlier I was looking for a custom body. What was it? It was well, I'll look for TT. So I can look for non-conforming script IDs, for example. So maybe it's I think it's saved search, and then I can do like 0 through 9. In other words, it doesn't have uh it doesn't have, is it save search? It's custom search, I think, isn't it? It doesn't have a
Custom
underscore
search.
with an initial. It has just the standard naming scheme, right?
Right.
So SEARCH. Okay. So if I look at my definitions for saved searches, here are all the saved searches where they're not named according to some, proper naming scheme. So I could come in here and I could begin to do some planning on, hey, what is this thing? First of all, I can figure out what it is. I'll show you how to do that even in a cooler way too. We can figure out what it is, and then we can make some changes to it, and then it would kind of be pulled off of this list. So it's another nice way to clean this. Another thing I wanted to show you real quick was if I inspect this element, in other words, take this particular save search and go back to my elements view, there's this really cool explain button. And what explain does is the other great thing about Salto using text files is that AI loves text files. And so we actually taught a large language model what NACL files are, which was really easy because they're a very normalized file for those engines. And it will reach in. We'll send this thing into the AI, and the AI will come back with some kind of transcribed description of what this thing does. So pretty great, to figure out from an NACL file the very distilled version of what a particular thing does. This works for saved searches. It also works for workflows. So another great way to figure out. Like I love my workflow here. Save searches, workflows. This approval workflow is great for this, right? So it's like I don't know what this workflow does. It's a big ugly mess from my perspective. How do I figure out what this thing is before I begin to ascertain how to deal with the technical debt? Well, I just click on the explain button and it'll give me a nice description of what the workflow actually does.
Yeah, if you've ever again, from the cleanup lens, maybe you had an admin leave who built a workflow, or again, you rolled off a third party partner. You're not quite sure what the workflow does. If you're trying to figure out what a complex workflow does in the NetSuite UI, you are clicking thousands of times trying to like reference, you know, one action, one deeply buried action against one other deeply buried action, like trying to navigate that. What does this workflow do? Question is extremely difficult and laborious in the NetSuite UI. So getting a text description from this is pretty fantastic if you're trying to get an understanding of maybe is this cruft? Is this something to be deleted? Do I still
Mhm.
need it? This
Yeah,
is great.
yeah, you bet. Okay. Roy, thanks for all your great questions. Does he have any more?
Yes. Yeah. Anyone else? Feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A tab.
Okay. All right, let's go through another process while we're waiting for any other questions. Let's think about changing making a change to a script ID, for example. So I just did this earlier because there was a wrong naming scheme. So I'm going to change it from TT. I know there's a few things that have this TT in their script ID, and I actually kind of want to fix that because um, uh it should say GWR. This is my stuff, and I was working on it for some other project. It's currently called TT, but now it's part of a new project. I want to repair this, right? So I can change the script IDs, but I can't do that within Salto. So Salto, what we use as our identifying our main ID for all of our elements is based on the script ID. So the element ID in total is like kind of the application name, the type name, and it's an instance, and this is the actual script ID. But I can actually search for all the things where TT shows up, and additionally, I'm also going to find all the places where it's used. Now, NetSuite's pretty cool in the sense that if I do this and I go and I modify this, here they are here. So there's a couple of them, right? So I'm going to go and update the script ID in this thing to be more compliant with what I want it to be, and I'm just going to can change it to GWR instead. Okay, save that. And do it the same thing to the other one. Now, NetSuite's pretty smart about changing it in a lot of places. So these are used in a workflow, but they're also used in scripts potentially as well. And so I want to make sure that in Salto that I capture all those other places where it might be used, right? So let me just finish changing them. Okay, so now I've changed them all. And if I go and I look at the workflow, it'll be changing the workflow. Um, but it may also be changed in it may also need to be changed in the suite scripts. So how do I know which suite scripts to go and look at? Well, that's when I would come back into Salto and I would kind of use the same search here that I did a minute ago, but instead of searching for elements that have the TT in their name, I would search across the entire content and say, okay, what other things do I need to worry about? All right, well, there's a script in the file cabinet that references this thing. So it's the SRD update script. So let me go back into uh, the file cabinet, and we'll fix that up. I think it's in here. This one here, and we'll edit this guy. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so instead of this, it's going to be called that. Great. So now I fixed one instance. Okay, the cleanup's done. Excellent. And I don't think I can save that. Yeah, that's already saved. So that's that one. Anything else I need to worry about? It appears in some forms. I know the forms are going to get fixed, so I don't have to worry about that. NetSuite's going to take care of that. The actual definitions themselves have already been changed, and I know their questions are going to be coming up about okay, how do we resynchronize this? And I'll show you. And then it appears in a workflow, and here's the actual script itself. So great. I think I've actually covered all the places where it's going to be affected. And so now I can do a fetch. Now what I want to do is I want to resynchronize Salto's view of the world with the actual view of the world in NetSuite. And so to do that, I'm going to do a custom fetch. I can do a full fetch, just takes a little bit longer, it takes 3 or 4 minutes. I'm just going to do a custom fetch here, and that is going to allow me to, first of all, specify some types to fetch. I don't want to fetch everything. I just want to fetch the workflows, the forms, and the body fields. And I'm also going to fetch all of anything in the file cabinet with JS in it, srd.star.js. Okay, so this is just a particular pattern that matches the file I just did. Normally I'd probably wait for a full fetch, but in this case I'm gonna grab just the pieces that I changed. So it's gonna run off again now. It's gonna do its connection to NetSuite, ask it all those questions again, only now in a limited way. It's only gonna ask the questions about a specific couple of types. And when that finishes running, I'll have an update of the local Salto copy of the world or vision of the world, and now it will match identically with the NetSuite world. So once that finishes, it'll show me that the transaction forms will have been updated nicely. And if there are any lingering cases where this string occurs, I should have probably left one out there. It'll find those as well. It should come back with pretty much an empty list, I believe, indicating that we've cleaned everything up. But if we haven't cleaned everything up, if we missed one or two, it'll still show up in this search, and so we can kind of iteratively refine the things that are still out there waiting for us to fix. Now, in this case, I'm fixing script IDs, but you can envision any kind of fix at all that might be applicable.
Big part of cleaning up is making things more consistent, right? Yeah, contractors do this and consultants do that and employees do those. You're going to have this drift in all your IDs and your names and things like that. You can use this searching and adjusting to bring things more in line, make things more consistent and more reliable maybe in your NetSuite account, more findable, more discoverable. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah. And my partial fetch may not have worked there, but I'm still seeing TT appearing. It might also be that it's still synchronizing, so just bear with me for 1 second while we wait for it to kind of finish its thing. Maybe I need to do a full fetch, so let me just do that. Oh, no, actually,
Okay,
interesting.
I have
Okay,
questions while
question,
the
hit
full
me.
fetch runs. So
Let's do that. Let's do that. Let me run the full fetch.
great. They're similar. Again, one of these from Roy, one of these from Eric.
Mhm.
They're similar, but not quite the same here. So the first thing is, does Salto help with script or workflow? And I'm going to extend that to object or customization usage. So can you see this workflow has not been run in 2 years, or this search has not been run in 6 months? Can you see that sort of information in Salto?
So we don't capture any usage information. We ask for all those XML files, basically. We do a little bit more than that. Like we actually check system notes for who modified a particular file. So we get a little bit of like author information, when it was last modified and who last modified every element. But we don't get any information about whether there are data in the record in the fields, for example, or whether a workflow was run at a particular time.
And then similarly, but not quite the same from Eric, can you see components that aren't used at all, more from a that aren't referenced at all? So fields that are not on any forms or searches. The second part of his question is the same as Roy's was. But can
Sort
we
of a
see,
negative search.
yeah, so can we do that negative search?
So these searches here, if I'm looking at the content tab, there is this regular expression bit here where I can specify things like I did before, right? So I'd custom search with followed by 0 through 9, oops, 0 through 9, followed by any character followed by anything. So we can do regular expressions. There are negative searches in regular expressions. So we can search for things that don't have that. Now, searching for something that isn't used, that's a great question.
I
So a
think
list of all
you,
the things that are not used anywhere.
yeah, I think you probably could, like if we take the example of, can I find a field that is not on any forms? I believe you could do
Yeah,
that through
yeah, we
the,
can do
because
that.
you can search in your element search,
Mhm.
you can look at dependence, you can search the dependencies And so can we look for a field that has no dependencies on a custom form or on a form?
Yeah, we can
I
search,
wonder.
for example, for a reference, right? If I want to search for a particular
Yep,
reference to
exactly.
this is a I don't know what that is. Let's see here. It might be hard for me to contrive an example right now, but we can search for references. So we can actually search for this whole thing here and say, okay, I want to search for that reference, and so I can see that this thing is only referenced once. So if you wanted to put in some reference in here, you could say, all right, is this referenced anywhere? So we can answer the question, is X referenced somewhere? Um, it might be harder, but maybe not impossible. I haven't thought about how to do this yet. To say, give me a list of things that aren't referenced. That might be a little harder, but maybe not impossible. I'd have to think about that.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you can do like, you know, for instance, search all the custom fields that have have let's see, maybe that wouldn't do it. We'll just say have dependencies that don't match custom forms, that don't match the custom form type or the custom form prefix.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I'm
Might work.
modifying the wrong script here, but I'm still seeing all my TTs. So uh, 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 I'll have to look into why that is. I'll see if I can figure out why these are still here. I did change that thing, didn't I? Maybe I missed a field. Did I miss a field? Cust body TT. I missed a field. That's what it was. So cust body TT field edit. That's what the problem is. Okay, hang on
You
here.
proved your example. It shows
There you
you,
go.
any stragglers, anything you forgot,
Yeah, they're
anything you left
stragglers.
behind. It's
All right.
showing
Yeah,
you
look at
it's
that.
showing you
Okay.
that. You don't
No,
have to
not
think
that
about
one.
it.
Not that one. That's custom list. That's not what I want. I want body field, I believe. Well, let's actually ask Salta. I messed up some stuff. I didn't delete everything. So what is it that I'm missing? Okay, let's find out. There's still an element called TT. That I should have recognized this on our first one. When I did the search, there was three before. Now there's only one. So I got rid of two, but I forgot one. So here's a straggler. Okay, good. So it's the amp edit field. All right, fair enough. I got to come back in here to this guy. And here I can see that these ones are changed, but there's another one. Here it is. Here's the straggler. Great. So I proved myself. Yeah, it wasn't that our fetch didn't work. It was that our stragglers were still there. So now I'm going to fix this one, and we'll move forward on that. So underscore TBR underscore edit. That's all. Okay, great. So now I've changed them all. Now I can do a fetch, and it would actually this list would go. I suspect this was more like 150 before because we got rid of two. Now it's down to 46. We'll do another fetch, and it'll get rid of the rest of these from the workflows in the forms. Cool. All right. We're coming up on some time, so I can keep going. I'm happy to keep going with some more questions. Um, I'll set these fetches in motion so that we can see the results of those. But what kind of back and forth can we do here, Eric? We've got
Let's
some more
see.
questions.
Not at the moment, but
Okay.
so now is the time. If you've got questions for either of us, now is the time to enter them. I think maybe some things we can make more explicit here. It would be similar, but like one of the things we're often cleaning up is bundles. We accrue
Mhm.
bundles over time, and we don't always need them for a very long time, or it's pretty common to replace them, swap them out, things like that. We can look at bundle dependencies just like we can look at field dependencies, script dependencies, etc. So
Indeed.
we
I'm
can
going to
actually
find.
see if we're thinking we want to extricate ourselves from a bundle, remove it from our account, we can go into Salto and see what are all the things that this bundle touches, what are all the things that rely on this bundle being there, um, things like that. So we can go see those dependencies as well if we're trying to remove or replace a bundle as
Yeah,
well. That's a
I've got a great
common
use case for that
common
too.
thing to clean up. Great.
Yeah, in addition to cleaning up, sometimes you're running into cases where, hey, we've done some modifications to the elements of this bundle, and yet we want to
Mm-hmm.
upgrade the bundle. Okay, well, hang on. If I upgrade the bundle, I'm going to lose my modifications, at least potentially. And so there's a
Yep.
couple of ways we can solve that. First of all, we can get a handle on this. So this we can see, hey, here's the bundle, right? Here are all the things that are in the bundle. For any particular one of those, let's see if I can go. Let's look at the suite script or suitelet, for example. Let's look at this particular suitelet. So if I was looking at some element in a bundle, I'm like, well, hang on, is this thing used? Where does this thing come from? Well, right here we can see that this thing comes from a bundle. So if we've done modifications to this, it's like, uh-oh, how do I preserve that? So one way to preserve that is if you've done modifications to this element and you want to upgrade the DocuSign bundle, every time we do a fetch, we actually do a full backup of all this stuff. So everything that is fetched is available for a restore as well. So if I want to do a modification of this element, and then I want to restore this particular modification of this element after I install the bundle, we can do that with a compare and deploy. So we come in here to compare and deploy, and we say restore from a previous version, and I would pick the version before I did the bundle upgrade. And when I select that for comparison, what it's going to do is it's going to compare that earlier version of NetSuite configuration, including all of the suite scripts and things like that, to whatever happened to my NetSuite environment after I clobbered the bundle by updating it. And now I can look for the things that are in that bundle and just redeploy the particular elements that I customized from that bundle. So it's a really nice way of kind of recovering from all kinds of things, including bundle upgrades as well. So these,
Timely,
just go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, timely question from Roy, real quick. Could I
Okay.
restore a saved search because it got deleted?
Absolutely, yeah. So let's look for one. So
Checking it.
this is our normal compare and deploy functionality. You can compare prod to dev, or you can compare dev to dev yesterday. And when I do that comparison, I can see the additions, modifications, and deletions that are part of that change. And let's see, I don't have any save searches that were deleted. So if I go and delete one and do a fetch, it would show up here as something that I could restore. In this case, there's a suite script that was deleted, and so I can replace all of these. In fact, I think I will replace these suite scripts. I've kind of been missing these, in fact. Thanks, Roy, for the question. So let me grab all these ones and I'm going to put them back because I want to actually restore all of these to my dev environment. So this allows me, and here you see Knuckles doing his work. So this is where we put Knuckles to work and get him doing some actual stuff for us. Uh, what he's doing now is he's just verifying that the things I'm asking NetSuite to do are likely to work. He's also verifying that I didn't miss any dependencies that aren't already deployed. So if there's a dependency on a field that doesn't exist yet, we would actually see that here. In this case, it's just these are just a bunch of suite scripts that I was playing around with. They're not actually didn't do anything. We're just doing some CI/CD work to integrate things like VS Code into a whole process where we use Salto. And so I'm just going to put those back, and I'm going to deploy those, and it's just warning me that I'm out of date with respect to the element that this target environment hasn't been fetched a little while, which is fine. It's an old environment, and so it's going to go ahead and do all that work, and then my suite scripts will be done and replaced.
Got more questions here
Okay,
while this runs. From
okay.
Jeff. Do you have
All
any
right, Jeff.
tools or do you have any
Jeff with a
tools or
G or Jeff with a
suggestions
J?
with J?
All right. Well, we'll forgive you for
Yeah.
that one.
Do you have any tools or suggestions for deleting records over X years old, or I assume any time span, while taking into account dependent related records?
Sure. So we can, okay. Finding out how old we have a last modified date. Let me see if I can. First of all, this is done. Deployment successful. I've got all my files back in my file cabinet. But if we wanted to do if I wanted to look at things that were that are a certain age, let me think about that. I think if we look in here and do let's just do 39. Okay, so I'm just going to compare two environments together. And when I compare those environments, there is a changed by. I think there's also a changed at on the off to the right-hand side here. Let me see here. Changed at. Okay, it's a little bit long. So if I look at, if I expand all here, change by, change at. Some of these will have, there we go. So this one's been changed as of December. So I can look at stuff that hasn't been changed in a long time. Now I can't see how old data is in a record, for example. So if I've got a field and it's on a transaction record, I can't see if there's data in that. That's not that we don't operate with data. We only operate with the metadata. But I can look at these things and say, hey, okay, hasn't been used in a long time. Maybe there's an older one here. Let me see if I can sort by this. If I can find a really old one, maybe at 2024, the end, maybe. 3, yeah, there aren't that many. But if I find one of these and I want to delete it, yeah, I could actually, if it was a deletion here, it would actually tell me the things that I should probably delete along with it because they depend on it. So we could either do it here or we could go back into the Explore view and do that dependency analysis there.
I think we can do what Jeff is asking from a metadata, from a configuration perspective, but not from a data perspective. I can't look at, show me all the instances of this custom record that are, that were created 5 years ago. That's something you would probably do with a Save Search and
Right. Yeah,
probably some custom scripting to handle all of the dependent, um, deleting all the dependent records as well, um,
yeah,
if they aren't parent-child. Some
that's right.
clever stuff you could do with parent-child, but that's for like a NetSuite consulting call, I guess. Let's see. I've got more questions. Uh, if you're ready, Jeff.
Yeah, go for it.
Um, One from Brian here. Can we clean up projects in the sandbox to make sure all the dependencies or references will exist in production as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you do the cleanup, and you've tested it out in Sandbox, and you're pretty sure that Sandbox is nicely consistent. There aren't any hanging dependencies because it works, right? We can tell you about those hanging dependencies just by a simple analysis within Sandbox. But when you go to take those changes and deploy them into production, that's the other thing we can do. So we go to production, we would create a compare and deploy against your dev environment, your sandbox, and promote the changes. I can never type when people are looking at me, so ignore the spelling mistake. Um, and so we can take some of those changes and deploy those. And when we do that, let's for example, let's see here. If I go to my workflow here, I believe I've got a workflow that if I tried to deploy it, dependencies would be missing. So that two-level workflow we were looking at before, which is right here it is. So here's a workflow, right? It's dependent on stuff. So if I select it, it's going to say, hey, by the way, you've got some missing dependencies. This workflow depends on on fields and scripts, but it also depends on roles. Now, the roles don't show up here because they're already identical, so I don't have to worry about those. But it's saying, look, if you want to promote this approval workflow, you have to select those things as well. Now, those in turn might create further dependencies, and we'll see that out here on the missing dependencies tab. So anytime we make selections, it makes sure that we've got a full set of dependencies. In this case, I can kind of dig down and find out what that is. It's the actual JavaScript file in the workflow in the file cabinet, right? Now there aren't any further dependencies. So yeah, we will actually capture all the dependencies along the way as you clean up dev at your sandbox. Make sure everything works the way you want it to. And now I want to promote those changes, the cleanup work we've done to production. We will remind you of all the dependencies that may have been messed up as part of the promotion process that haven't been, we'll remind you to do the whole set of changes, and we won't let you miss any because we'll tell you about the missing dependencies and other dependencies as well. So things that have changed too.
I've got one last question, and then we've got about 4 minutes left, so I'll probably wrap us up after that. Um, I got two now, both from
Okay.
Roy.
Okay. Thank you, Roy.
Curious, as an admin, does Salto have reminders like NetSuite does?
Interesting. Well, not exactly reminders. We have something called Monitor, which allows us to set up sort of flags. It says when something changes, we'll send you an email, right? So for
Or
example, I've
Slack
got
message.
all changes. And all changes means, hey, anything at all that changes in NetSuite, put a notification in my Slack channel. Okay, so that's nice for everything. It's a nice audit. But if I want specific things, like here's one. here are what I've got selected here as things to monitor are there are probably workflows in here and just this one and just the one. Okay, so just that one workflow. What I'm saying here is like, hey, I want to know when this workflow changes. So I'll actually get a an email every time this workflow changes after every single fetch. So this is good for this is my stuff. Don't mess with it. It's good for I want an ongoing audit of everything that ever changes, although we have that in other ways as well. But this is a nice way to capture it in a Slack channel. Also things like SOX elements. So if there's some elements that are managed by SOX, you don't want them, you want to know when they are changed. Or integration points, right? When there are fields that a recipe in Workato is being used, sorry, a field in NetSuite is being used in a Workato recipe, you can set up monitors for that as well, so that when someone makes a change to that field, it'll tell the you can tell the Workato folks to go and update their recipes.
Yeah, I've used this for something that happens more frequently than I would like. Is I have a script that depends on or that uses a saved search, and it depends on that saved search being structured in a certain way. It needs certain fields to come back. It needs certain filters set up,
Right.
and anyone, admins can go in and change that field. Maybe they're changing the criteria or they're changing the field structure. I can proactively monitor for a change, show me any saved searches that are referenced by scripts that have changed. If that happens, send me a Slack message, send me an email, so I can go investigate the impact of the change and whether I need to change my script to accommodate those changes. So, really useful monitors for sure.
Awesome. And that
I
kind of
have
brings
one
us to the end, doesn't
last,
it? Oh,
yeah,
one
I
more.
have one
Great.
last
Okay.
question.
I'm all
I think
ears.
it's quick, and then I'm going to wrap us up. Again from Roy. As an admin, I dorked up and deleted a sweet script. Can Salto restore it and the deployment?
Yes, we can, provided you fetched it beforehand, of course. So yes, if you do delete one after we are already managing your environments, we like I said, we have a snapshot of your environment for as far back as you can remember. So I think this list
Refetch.
stopped at 100, but this goes back to November. Yeah, every
Yeah, so
fetch.
every
Right.
time you fetch, it gets stored, all of that history gets stored in Git and is tracked forever, indefinitely.
And we can do a restore from it and we can pick any one of those as my recovery point. So back to this one goes back even further. It goes back to, oh gosh, yeah. I've been doing this a long time.
All right. Any closing comments, Jeff?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for making some time to participate today. I'd like to thank all the folks who asked some questions. Great questions. In particular, Roy, thank you. And yeah, I think it was a great session. I hope it was useful for everybody.
Yeah. If any of this looked interesting, you have more questions, you want to try this stuff out for yourself, you can go to salto.io/netsuite. You can sign up for a free trial and just go play around yourself. Check this out. And also request your own personal demo if you have more detailed or personalized questions. So that's salto.io/netsuite. And thank you everyone for joining us, for asking questions. And we hope we see you next time.